I mean, but I want to get to a broader point about Vince. This is another glaring example of Vince McMahon being the most overrated star creator in the history of pro wrestling. He has this reputation of being this great star creator, this brilliant wrestling mind who gets people over. And 205 Live collectively, not any individual guy per se, but the wrestlers on 205 Live collectively, he got them less over than they were ever over before, with the benefits of the WWE marketing machine. So this is another glaring example of Vince McMahon failing to not only create stars, but making people less of a star than they were before. He is so overrated in that regard. And I don't care who argues with me. I'll debate anyone. Okay? This is a guy who's a tremendous businessman, who made tremendous business decisions to get where he is. I'll never take that away from him.
Ballsy business. I think more than anything, yeah, that you can really credit him for taking a risk and going against the grain in some respects.
Fortune favors the bold is the perfect way to. He took enormous risks. They worked out, and good on him, because that is a tremendous personality trait of his. I legitimately think, and I'm not saying this is not hyper. I legitimately think he is a lousy professional wrestling booker / promoter and star creator. I think he sucks. I think he lucked in. He made a great business deal to secure the services of a guy who was already the biggest star in the world in Hulk Hogan.
Right, already Hulk movie
Hogan
star.
Was already the biggest star in pro wrestling before.
No, the narrative says that he pinned Iron Sheik and became a star, Joe. So you're wrong.
So he made a good business deal to get Hulk Hogan. He lucked into Stone Cold Steve Austin because
Chili McFreeze would have been just as over as Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Ringmaster was a fucking bomb. Stone Cold Steve Austin got himself over, and then Vince sat on him for 9 months.
No, he won the King of the Ring and then won the title like immediately after. He didn't work the pre-show the next month at SummerSlam. What are you talking about, Joe?
Losing a feud to Savio Vega. No, none of that happened.
That never happened.
He lucked into
wins King of the Ring, pins Shawn Michaels, Mike Tyson, star. I don't know what you're talking about.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, he made himself a star in that company, and Vince still almost whiffed on it. He lucked into Stone Cold Steve Austin. He nearly blew The Rock. How do you almost blow The Rock, which was the biggest layup in wrestling history? How do you blow that one? He almost blew it with the fucking smiling babyface bullshit. That was Vince's vision of The Rock. Vince's vision of Dwayne Johnson, the biggest movie star in the world, and a guy who everyone in wrestling said was a lock to be a megastar.
Right, Jerry Lawler, Pat Patterson, anybody who laid eyes on him said
anyone
this guy,
in the wrestling business who saw him said he's a lock, and Vince almost blew it with The Rock.
Blue chipper. What are you talking about?
He almost blew it with The Rock.
Are you kidding? No.
He is the most overrated star creator in history. John Cena.
Seconds away from firing John Cena. Yeah.
He was going to cut John Cena until, as legend has it, Bruce Pritchard and Stephanie McMahon heard him rapping on a bus, and then they pitched it to Vince, and it saved his job, and then he lucked into the rest. He was going to cut him. Okay? I don't want to hear a word about Vince McMahon's star creator.
The Daniel Bryan story, though. Are you talking about the Daniel Bryan story? Was awesome. The fans started being invested in Daniel Bryan, and then they had him win the title at WrestleMania. It was great. There was no Wyatt family bullshit. None of that stuff. It was just like, you guys want him. You guys are buying his merch or whatever. Let's do it. Daniel Bryan is going to win the title at WrestleMania, Joe. It worked perfect.
Yeah, that's another one that he almost
except for the year and a half where he fucked around everybody and had Daniel Bryan lose 4 pay-per-view main events in a row, had him join the Wyatt family, it took the fans absolutely just laying a gigantic a steaming pile of shit on Batista at the Royal Rumble, and CM Punk walking out until he said, fine, Daniel Bryan in the main event. Like,
how much money did he leave on the table with Daniel Bryan? I mean, honestly.
There was a year and a half.
I mean, how much money?
Dick that guy around and
how much money did he leave on the table with Daniel Bryan? But the 4 biggest stars he ever had, one he just made the best business deal to secure when he was already the biggest star in the world. 2 others he literally lucked into, and the other he almost blew a layup. He almost missed a fucking layup. So this guy is the most overrated star creator I ever heard of. Now he's got something. Look, The Undertaker. I'll give him credit for The Undertaker. Okay, I'll give him credit for Batista to some degree. Okay, but the 4 biggest stars he ever had,
Ramon, those sort of guys, and those guys
are like upper Look, if Razor Ramon never existed, is there any butterfly effect grand change in where the company is today? Of course not. Okay, here's the 4 guys who matter.
Yeah,
Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, and John Cena. And I just broke down how he nearly fucking blew it with all of them. If Vern Gagne decides to make a better deal to keep Hulk Hogan, you don't even know who Vince McMahon is if you're listening. We're not even doing this show. Give me a break with this brilliant wrestling mind. He's not. He's a good businessman.
Yeah, well, really, I mean, you want to go back to it. I mean,
shitty wrestling mind.
We can do this for a whole show. This might have to be a Patreon one one of these days too. But I mean, really look at people that know the history of the Black Saturday or whatever. I mean, that was less business mind and less wrestling mind and more business mind, and that ended up being a huge deal because he swipes the time slot, gets money when they buy back in or whatever, and then use that money to kind of use WrestleMania or whatever. That has nothing to do with his booking of pro wrestling. That's just smart business. Like we said, balls. The guy's got literally grapefruits or whatever the hell he says. Like he's got those, and he's definitely taken a number of risks throughout the days. But that's a different story. You're not saying that he's not a good businessman. He absolutely is a good businusman. But he's a terrible. I mean, when you look at the track record, the wrestling is not great. He's a much better businessman than any of your run-of-the-mill, territory promoters or whatever, because he had the balls
the moves that
to shake it up. Yeah, he had the balls to say, "Oh, fuck it, I don't care if I have to run in Kentucky. I don't give a shit. I'm running in Kentucky. Fuck off. Yeah, I'm doing whatever I want to do."
And he shut down Crockett at every turn, threatening not to give pay-per-views, not to give WrestleMania to the pay-per-view providers if they didn't, run SummerSlam instead of Crockett.
Survivor Series, yeah.
Survivor Series, yeah. Those things were all brilliant. Look, he's a brilliant businessman. He's aggressive, and he made all the right moves, and I give him a ton of – and now listen. Now, I could even tell you that he had a leg up since his father and his grandfather got him started. Okay, we're not talking about a guy who built it from the fucking ground up either.
I always have to. It's funny because when you talk to people are like, "Oh, Vince McMahon took wrestling from nothing." And I'm like, "Well, his dad did." he kind of
had a nice little head start there. Okay,
right.
All right. So let's not pretend that him and Linda were fucking living in a hut and fucking did this from the ground up either. But I'll go a step further. I don't even think he's a good promoter. And you know why I don't even think he's a good promoter? Which people are probably going, no, I don't even think he's a good promoter. I think he's a lousy promoter. He failed at bodybuilding. He failed at bodybuilding supplements. He failed at boxing with the Sugar Ray Leonard, Donnie Lalonde fight. He failed at football, and he's about to fail at football twice. Okay? I don't think he's a great promoter. I think he's a guy who was a great businessman, a savvy businessman, an aggressive businessman who lucked in to the 4 biggest stars in wrestling and didn't even create them himself. That's what he is. I don't even think he's a great promoter. He's never been successful at anything else. Ever. In fact, he's done nothing but fall on his face with everything else. So, so sorry. And again, the 205 Live thing might seem like small potatoes, but look at it. Even look at concepts and wrestlers that he got his hands on that were successful and made money before he got their hands on them that he made less popular and made less money with. WCW, ECW, Dusty Rhodes, Ric Flair, the Road Warriors. I can go on and on all day. He made all of these things and people less popular and made less money with them than other promoters did. And I'm supposed to think this guy is the greatest mind in the history of professional wrestling? He's not. He's not. His ideas are bad. Most of his ideas are bad. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's never had good ideas. He's never had good concepts. WrestleMania was a great idea. The Undertaker is obviously the most successful gimmick in the history of wrestling, you could argue. I mean, which is still drawing money today. But this guy has failed and fallen on his face so many times, has so many poor ideas, and has made less money with things that were layups. The NWO. How do you fuck that up? How do you fuck up ECW nostalgia and sit on it for a year after the money that show drew and the money that those DVDs were drawing? And he sat on it for a year and made no money on it. I mean, how do you do that? How do you not make money with WCW?
How do you book the invasion? Yeah, how do you book the invasion and have Stephanie and Shane?
How do you blow the easiest wrestling storyline in the history of professional wrestling and pop one pay-per-view rating with it? Yeah. One. How? How do you do that? By being a shit promoter. That's how. By being an extremely overrated wrestling mind. That's how. The guy's overrated, Rich. And with 205 Live is another, it's a small example, but it's another example of taking things and making them less popular than they were before. Okay? You give a decent indie promoter that roster, and see what they can draw with them. Okay, he made them less popular by giving them his characters, by getting the character out of them. And he made them less popular, less marketable. They got worse crowd reactions as we went along. The guy's overrated. He's overrated. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of people calling him this great wrestling mind and this star creator and this brilliant promoter. He's not. He's an aggressive businessman. And I'll give him credit for that all day long. But he's not good at this. If you really look at the facts, he's just not.